Last time in this Surah Ar-Rahman series,
Wait, I thought the whole point of Judgment Day was what? Ask about the sins. And now he's saying, on that day, none shall be asked about their sins. No human, no jinn. What in the world? How does that make any sense? Let me explain.
Ar-Rahman, allama al-Quran.
To help you follow along and reflect more deeply, we've created a companion workbook for this series. Download it at bayyina.com/Rahman.
يومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So we're almost done discussing the scary stuff that's at the heart of the surah. What I want to do today is pick up from where we left off, give you an overview, and then inshallah we get to see the other side of the equation. So Allah says in ayah number 39, on that day nobody will be asked, لا يسأل عن ذنبه, nobody will be asked about their sin, neither the human being nor the jinn. And this is again the opening scene of Judgment Day. The interesting word here is dhanb, one of the many words in the Quran for sin. So sayyi'a, jur, janah, there's different words in Arabic that are used for sins. And dhanb actually comes, it's related to some pots are very deep and you have a ladle or like a really deep spoon that can get to the bottom of it without you getting scorched. That spoon is called a mithnaba. The dhanb is the tail of an animal. A bucket that goes all the way to the bottom of a well is also called a dhanb. So, and aznab is also used for, like politicians, they give a lot of rhetorical speeches and people get fired up and a lot of people follow them without thinking about it, right? Those kinds of people that just follow a politician around no matter what they say or do and they don't change their views, they're called aznab, the lowest of the people who don't have a brain for themselves. So the tail, the long spoon, the low bucket, and low intelligence people. So there's a common thread between all of these words, which is what? Lowness, right? Lowness, or something embarrassing almost. The word dhanb is used for an action that brings me low, that lowers my dignity, my status, my rank. You can also think of dhanb as something that's embarrassing, like the tail is the embarrassment of the animal. In fact, there was a poet who used to talk about the pride of his people. His tribe's name as a nickname was Anfun Naqa, like the nose of the camel. So they call their tribe the camel nose because the camel is very tall and the nose is the pride, it's all the way up high. Like the image of somebody who's stuck up, right? So another poet who was roasting them called them dhanabun naqa, like the tail of the camel. Right? So he was trying to embarrass them by switching their name from the nose of the camel to the tail of the camel. Coming back to the point in the ayah, Allah is using the word dhanb to say that there are things we do that are embarrassing, and on that day, the embarrassing sins don't have to be asked about because, as I was mentioning, is going to get unfolded, the embarrassment will show where? On the face, right? So the word is appropriate to that. The other interesting thing is there's an interesting difference between sayyi'a and dhanb. So both words for sins, and Surah Al-Fath is a really nice place where both of these words occur together. Dhanb is also used for the Prophet ﷺ. So لِيَغْفِرَ لَكَ اللَّهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِكَ. So the dhanb is used for Rasulullah ﷺ. So how do we understand that? Well, the easy example of that would be, let's just say somebody comes to this masjid to pray Fajr, right? And they get here basically even before the adhan is given every day. They just get the first person here, unlocks the doors. and comes here and prays. And there's somebody who never comes and prays and never even gets up for Fajr. And one day something gets in their head and they decide they're going to come for Fajr, right? But they don't come for the first part of the prayer. They barely make it to the second rak'ah and they join for ruku'. So they made it, but they kind of made it at the end. And the person who normally prays every day and opens the door, one day he got late and he joined at the same time. So there's two people who joined at the same time, second rak'ah, they caught the ruku' at the same time. One of them, this is like the height of his spiritual career. Like this, I was in the masjid for Fajr and I got the ruku'. And the person next to him, this is like one of the worst, most embarrassing days of his spiritual career, because what's happened to me? How did I get this late? He's so disappointed in himself. What I'm trying to get at is people may be embarrassed by different things because their standards are higher or lower, right? Now, there's some things that everybody should be feeling bad about. Stealing is wrong. It's not like some people are not embarrassed by stealing and other people are more embarrassed. Wrong is wrong. Lying is lying. But when it comes to good deeds, or when it comes to, things that are expected of us, some people hold themselves up to a higher standard. Other people say, I'll just follow the bare minimum. I'll be okay. Like you guys see this in the classroom or in the workplace, right? There are some students that hold themselves to a higher standard and they just want to keep excelling. So they're even in depression if they get a 95, right? And then there's another student, so long as they get a 66, 65, I don't know, I'm disappointed. 66, yeah, I know this stuff, right? So they have a lower standard. So long as they can pass, they're fine. They're not embarrassed by it. This is actually referring to every person has a gauge inside them, whether they think society thinks of it as bad or not. Because we're living in a time, it's interesting, we're living in a time where morality and what is right and wrong is so subjective now. Remember the whole conversation about my truth versus your truth, right? So everybody's got their own truth. So everybody's got their own standard of what dhanb is, So we all have relative fitrah now, right? But Judgment Day comes and everybody actually recognizes there's no more pride in your own version of morality. We all come back to the actual morality and we all realize what embarrassing things we've done and said, right? All the layers that society put on and all the fake layers that we put on ourselves, all of them get scraped off. وَتَرَكْتُمْ مَا خَوَّلْنَاكُمْ, Allah says. You left behind all the layers that we had wrapped you in. Right? So the Judgment Day, all of those layers get scraped off. So nobody's going to be asked. The other thing to subtly note about not being asked is that, if somebody's being, because the scene was they're being shot at. Remember? The sky is shooting at them and there's bombings going on. And you could just ask, hey, why are you doing this to me? Hey, what have I even done? Why is the police firing at me without even an investigation? Right? They have the right to ask that. No, they don't, because on that day, you don't have to even be asked. You will already know how incriminated you are. Like, people aren't even going to pretend that they're not criminals. They can't even pretend about that. So there's no need to ask. Another interesting thing, comment here is that there's two aspects of justice. The justice has to be done and justice has to be demonstrated. Let's listen to this carefully. Justice has to be done and justice has to be demonstrated. Now, what does that mean? Let's say you have a secret trial, right? There's somebody got, put in court and there's a secret trial. When there's a secret trial, the judge comes out and says, the evidence is a secret, the testimony was secret, the proceedings were secret, and I have declared that this person's guilty, right? Why are they guilty? Can't tell you. All of that is what? Secret. But justice was done. What is the public going to believe? Was that justice? No, because we don't just want to see justice done. We want to see justice demonstrated. We want to see the public trial, right? Now, Allah is the ultimately just. He actually does not need a judgment day to be just. He could just take people straight the moment of their death. He could just pick them up and put them in Jahannam and put them in Jannah as he wants. He could do that. Because the entire proceedings of a trial and every deed is being shown and the record is being shown and the deeds are being weighed and all that stuff, that's actually not justice. That is what? It's the demonstration of justice. There's a difference between justice and demonstration of justice. Allah on that day isn't just doing justice, He's demonstrating justice. And he's demonstrating justice to the people before he puts them in wherever he puts them. And it's not just showing them mercy, it's the demonstration of mercy. So there's absolutely no excuse left. You know, somebody gets thrown into Jahannam like, yeah, we say Allah is just, but I didn't get a trial. I mean, it wasn't like, where was my day in court? Allah says, I'll give you a day in court. I'll give you a day in court. But even the beginnings of that is the person who may have even argued that they did nothing wrong, they will know in and of themselves what they had done wrong. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. Now with this threatening language, Allah comes back to that same question. يُعْرَفُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ بِسِيمَاهُمْ. This is the ayah we're at now. The criminals shall be recognized by the marks on their faces. So sima can be marks on faces, can also be facial expressions, as we'll see in a second. فَيُؤْخَذُ بِالنَّوَاصِي وَالْأَقْدَامِ. Then the person shall be taken. So it's not يُؤْخَذُونَ, it's يُؤْخَذُ. He shall be taken. So it's an interesting switch. So it would have been يُعْرَفُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ بِسِيمَاهُمْ فَيُؤْخَذُونَ بِالنَّوَاصِي وَالْأَقْدَامِ. But the ayah is فَيُؤْخَذُ بِالنَّوَاصِي وَالْأَقْدَامِ. So the singular version is being used. So the switch in the translation would be criminals shall be recognized by the marks on their faces, and he shall be taken. You were expecting to hear they shall be taken, because who was talked about? Criminals, right? But the rest of the ayah is, and he shall be taken by the foreheads and the feet. So each one's being taken by foreheads and feet, and then back to the plural again. So there's a mix of the plural and the singular that's happening here. We're going to discuss that in a second. First thing I want you to know here is the development of the scene. And what does that mean? Well, Judgment Day started. People, like Allah says, I'll free myself up for you. سَنَفْرُغُ لَكُمْ. Then He openly challenges, run away if you can. Go ahead, knock yourself out. Then as we try to run away, or criminals try to run away, may Allah not make us from them, they're being shot down. Min narin wa nuhas. Then if that wasn't bad enough, the entire sky starts bleeding, molten brass and copper, and dripping like oil, turning blood red. Then now people don't even have to be asked. But even as they don't have to be asked, another thing, the look on their faces and the mark on their faces is showing. This mark on the face is an important, piece that may suggest that Allah is going to take the spiritual effect of bad deeds and actually turn that into a visible effect. Let me say that in simple English. We do good deeds right now, right? But when you do good deeds, it's not like your skin gets nicer. It's not like, you people say you have nur on your face. That's just, you put baby cream on. It's not nur on your face. Okay, you got oily skin. There is such a thing. There is somewhat such a thing. But we take that stuff too far. Oh my God, there's so much nur on their Instagram filter. Like it's just But on Judgment Day, Allah says that there's light coming from the believer's chest and light coming from their right hand. So it used to be our good deeds, has no effect on ourselves. But on Judgment Day, those good deeds and our good intentions get converted into what? They convert it into light. And actually, conversely, people who do bad deeds, every bad deed, like in this life, the hadith describes, the Prophet ﷺ describes a stain on the heart, right? But on Judgment Day, it actually becomes layers and layers of actual darkness. Actual darkness. So here in this life, Allah says He takes believers out of darknesses into light. مِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ. And the taghut min al-nur ila dhulumat, from light into darknesses, right? That's in this life. It's a spiritual image, and spiritual light and spiritual darkness. But actually, that spiritual reality, that unseen reality, becomes a seen reality on Judgment Day. It's a different kind of reality that day. So now people, it's not just the expression on the face of someone who's like, oh my God, I know what I did. But actually, physically, a darkness takes over them. This is something people commonly don't understand, and they really misread what the ayah is saying. For example, in Surah Al-Imran. In Al-Imran, Allah says, يَوْمَ تَبْيَضُّ وُجُوهٌ وَتَسْوَدُّ وُجُوهٌ. Some places on that day shall turn black, and some faces will turn white, and some faces will turn black, right? And those who disbelieved or did evil, their faces have turned black. Oh, look, there's a racist comment in the Quran. What does it mean, faces will turn black? Actually, it has nothing to do with skin color at all. The idea of faces turning black is if I turn all the lights off in this room, what will our faces be? They'll all be black. Why? Because it's actually referring to the lack of light on them. There's no light on their faces. They've become completely darkened like the black pitch of night. It's not talking about skin tone at all, you know? And this is why that same analogy is explained elsewhere as qit'am min al-layl. The darkness on their faces will be like a piece of a dark night, you know, a pitch black night. So there's lack of light is actually what's being described. Here, when you say that criminals will be recognized by the marks on their faces, perhaps the mark on their face is actually darkness. Other places in the Quran on Judgment Day, تَرْهَقُهَا قَطَرَةٌ عَلَيْهَا غَبَرَةٌ. You know, there's smut on the faces. There's tar on the faces. There's dirt on the faces. You know, basira. There's a darkness on the faces. On the flip side in Surah Al-Qiyamah, nadhira. They're lit. They're illuminated faces. Right? Because they're looking towards Allah. إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ نَاظِرَةٌ إِلَى رَبِّهَا نَاظِرَةٌ. So this imagery of dark and light that becomes actual dark and actual light on Judgment Day is really, really important. So the faces are actually going to be lit. So their faces are actually, in a sense, you know, overshadowed with darkness. The darkness of their deeds and the lack of light in their good deeds is actually now manifesting itself. Then, of course, when it says criminals shall be recognized in this way, they shall be recognized. It doesn't say Allah will recognize them or the angels will recognize them. It's saying they shall be recognized. This is the passive version of the verb. Now, passive verbs in English, let's take an English example. If I say, this child got beat up at school. He got beat up. Who did I not incriminate? Who? Like, was it one guy who beat him up? Was it a little girl who beat him up? Was it 5 boys that beat him up? Was it the 8th graders that beat up a 3rd grader? We don't know. We just know he got beat up. So there's the perpetrators are not mentioned. So when you say criminals shall be recognized, you're not mentioning who's doing the recognizing. You get it? So then what it is believers will recognize them. Oh my God, you were my best friend and there's no light on your face. Oh, thank God you're not my real best friend. There's a difference between them. They will see the darkness of each other. It was like, oh, this is where I belong. Angels will see the darkness. So it's not just one view. It's multiple views of these people. Everybody's seeing everybody. And so, and then the other interesting thing, this surah does not mention kafirun, mushrikun, zalimun, the typical terms for deniers of the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. He uses the word mujrimun, which is interesting because the surah began, the only call to good deeds in this surah was وَأَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ. You know, establish the weight with justice. And don't shortchange when it comes to the scale. Which means, and by the way, when people shortchange and mess with the scale and cheat and scam, they're criminals, aren't they? So the word mizan now has a correspondence with the word al-mujrimun. It's a fitting word for what's being described inside of the surah. This is another small indication of how vocabulary inside a surah is interconnected. Words inside of a surah are, there's an whole ecosystem inside of a surah. So it's important to understand the ayat within a surah to really get a grasp of what's going on. Instead of just isolated ayat on, there's an ayah about this and there's an ayah about that. Well, which surah is it in? And what was the ecosystem of that surah, right? That's a really important part of studies. So, يُعْرَفُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ بِسِيمَاهُمْ. The word jaram or mujrim, it actually just has, it's also really interesting. I'll tell you what this means. It means earning. It also means a heavy basket or a heavy bag that you take all the dates that fall from the tree, you pick it up and you hold a really heavy bag, right? The heavy weight of a bag. Jirm also means the weight of a body. Actually, the word mujrim means someone who's done a heavy crime. It actually has to do with heavy weight, which is really cool because the word mizan is the scale that measures what? Weight. So again, a correspondence with that word, right? Now, here's some ayat about I wanted to just give you a view of how faces are really important in the Quran. Faces and facial expressions. So the Quran is actually putting quite a bit of emphasis on the face. And whether it's the believer's face, you know, سِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ مِنْ أَثَرِ السُّجُودِ in Surah Al-Fath. You'll see the mark on their faces because of the effect of sujood. Some people feel that that's literally talking about a blemish on the forehead. So they'll get like the kind of sajada or musalla, or Urdu speakers call it the jainamaz, right? That has like a little scrapey thing at the top, so they can just make sure they get the simahum fi wujuhihim min athar sujud, right? That's not what that's referring to. What that's referring to is, let me tell you, like if you're, I like silly examples. It gets the point across. If you have a kid who loves bullying other kids, like he's just waiting to hurl an insult at somebody, sitting in a class waiting, who am I going to troll? There's a certain look on their face. There's a certain dubious look on their face, right? And if they get in the habit of doing that, that look becomes a part of them, okay? Teenagers, but when you were preteens, you were so nice. You were so nice. Like yours is a smile on your face. Hi, mama. Hi, baba. How's your day? And it was just like this lit face. And then you started hanging around cynical people that are always criticizing and always saying negative things and always dismissing things and whatever. I don't care. Like you just all the time. And then your face changes. So the negativity you have in all your conversations actually starts impacting your actual face, right? It has an impact on you. People that are always negative, right, for a long time, does it show on their face? Yeah, totally. And people that are just, they try to stay optimistic and happy, and even if they're not smiling, you can tell this person's at peace. There's long-term behaviors actually have an impact where? On the face. A life of sajda, right? A life of humbling yourself, truly humbling yourself, humbling myself before Allah, actually has an impact where? On the face. And by the way, saying that it has an impact on the face means it has an impact on the personality. Because your face is an expression of your personality, right? So now when criminals are recognized by the marks of their faces, there was a certain personality that they demonstrated, they exhibited, and now it's taking this new form. Look at that ayah I was telling you, كَأَنَّمَا أُخْشِيَتْ وُجُوهُهُمْ قِطْعًا مِنَ اللَّيْلِ, as if their faces on that day have been covered with a piece of the night. أَبْصَارُهُمْ خَاشِعًا, on Judgment Day, their eyes are going to be filled with fear. Like if you zoomed in on the eye, the way the pupil is dilating is being talked about now in the ayah. وُجُوهٌ يَوْمَئِذٍ عَلَيْهَا غَبَرَةٌ, faces that have dirt covered on them, smut thrown on them. Then the rest of the ayah, when they're going to be grabbed by the forehead and the feet, we'll get to that in a second. But the expression of the face, even the arrogance of the kuffar, was captured by describing their faces, right? The enemies of Islam, among their crimes is ثُمَّ نَظَرْ ثُمَّ عَبَسَ وَبَصَرْ ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ وَاسْتَكْبَرْ. Then he stared, then he frowned, then he looked like he's thinking deeply, and then he turned away. Like Allah is describing every part of his facial expression, لَيُزْلِقُونَكَ بِأَبْصَارِهِمْ لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرِ. These disbelievers, the way they stare at you is like through their laser beam stare, they want you to fall and slip when they hear the Quran. The hatred, the visceral hatred in their eyes when they hear you recite the Quran, right? لَمَّا سَمِعُوا الذِّكْرِ. So actually the face is a really important part of demonstrating arrogance. And on the flip side, if you look, for example, at the wisdom Luqman was giving his son, he said, رضي الله عنه, وَلَا تُصَعِّرْ خَدَّكَ لِلنَّاسِ, don't swell your cheek at people. Again, face, right? Over and over again, you find this expression. What do you find in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ? Al-basmatu fi wajhi akhika sadaqa. Smiling in the face of your brother is charity. It's not just, hey, Assalamu alaikum, brother. That's not what that means. It actually means you let go of grudges. You let go of dual intentions. You're actually soft and gentle towards the person you're meeting,
Coming up next time in this Surah Ar-Rahman series.
They're not going to believe there's a fire by hearing it on the news. They're going to have to see the smoke or get close enough to feel the heat, and then they'll react, right? So the distinction between our decision-making and animal decision-making is actually al-bayan. That's the difference.